Welcome back to another show in WA County Corsos where we talk everything dogs. This time we got our dear brother Justin Mckee. Centerbulls is in the house. What's going on, brother?
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. Nothing. Just kicking it, doing dogs. Been doing dogs for a long time, so it's not a hard talk, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So let's do give the audience a little introduction on yourself if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, so I got started in American Bulldogs specifically back, I think it was late 96, early 97. Back then it was the paper. Really didn't have any exposure to the breed outside of just being a young punk kid that was hustling and wanted a big man killer at my door in case somebody came in and gave me shit. And I think I ran across one day and was like, wow, I really got to get me one of these. And then hit the paper. And at the time I had a girlfriend and she did some of the legwork on looking through the paper, and we found a lady. I was in Columbus at the time, and found a lady out on the Near East Side, and her and her husband had a litter of pups. They were 100% Johnson bloodline,
Mhm.
and went over there and kind of met with her, and that was the beginning of the end, I guess, or
Yeah.
and then yeah, so I picked up my first pup from her. Um, had that dog for a few months, maybe almost 6 months, and then she had called. We had been staying in touch, and she had called and asked if we were interested in taking another dog. It was another pup from the same litter that had come back to her in pretty bad shape. I think the dog had parvo. It was blind in one eye. One of the other puppies or something happened with the new ownership that it scarred the eye, and he really didn't have much sight out of it. And yeah, we were kind of dumb and young, and we said yes. And so we had the two males, and they were about 6 months old. And then yeah, we learned all the hard lessons of having two intact males and everything that came with it. But that's kind of when I got my feet wet. Really did never had, back then I was young. I was 19, so I
Mhm.
wasn't really thinking about breeding or the dog game. I didn't really understand what it was all about. I was just trying to survive. And then, fast forward, professionally, life took me on the road. I was traveling quite a bit, but we always had an American Bulldog. By the time I got past the first two, I had learned some substantial lessons. And then from there, I had picked up another pup from a gentleman up in Cleveland. He had a Freddy Krueger grandson that he had been working protection. He had actually been trying to get the dog certified to do actual canine work for the police department, but he was getting kind of roadblocked because of the general persona. I think at the time, Pitt still had a bad name. The American
Right.
Bulldog kind of looked like a Pitt, but even bigger. And as far as going into service work, I think the public persona and the stigma around the breed kind of stipend him a little bit. But what it showed me when I was up there was the dog was highly trainable, super intelligent. And inversely, I didn't know what I was looking at. Again, I was just a pet owner at the time, wanted a cool dog, just picked one of the pups, took him home. And honestly, the dog was absolutely amazing animal in a lot of respects. Fell short in a few,
Mhm.
but the intelligence traveled through the genetics, and he was super easy to train. And at the time, we were fixing to have our first kid, so I had, from the first mistakes, I had made the decision, well, I'm going to get a trainer in here and train me to train the dog. And um and so that was my first kind of introduction to real training, getting the dog fully off leash trained, 100% controllable. And since that dog kind of had that genetics, he really picked up, and kind of that genetic imprint just kind of carried right along. So he was really good there. Where he wasn't really good was he just hated men. He hated all men.
Mhm.
The only person he truly liked as a man was myself and a handful of friends. But with that being said, his temperament was strong enough that I could put him in a place command and have company over. He'd never leave the spot. Now, he wasn't the most friendly. He didn't have the most friendly demeanor sitting there, but he stayed there. Um, and he went on and lived full life with us. I think we ended up having to put him down at maybe 13 years old.
Oh
So
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did the full trek. He was with my kids for, a good portion of their life, and then right before he was getting kind of in that last year or two, I started picking up another dog, and then it kind of snowballed a little bit. We had changed homes, got out of a suburb and or a development, I should say, and moved out onto some property, and that's kind of when I really got really full steam into the dogs. I started attending dog shows, seeing more dogs, what was out there, starting to get back.
Mhm.
I had come off the road professionally, so I was actually working locally, and that's kind of when I started really kind of getting my roots down and
Right.
figuring out, okay, what am I trying to do here? I was like, well, I kind of had interest in showing the dogs. When I went to the shows, I got introduced to weight pull and hang time and tug of war and some of the stuff that was happening kind of in that 2009, 2010 era, when the shows were still kind of big and getting a lot of traction. And that kind of gave me a good synopsis of what was out there for the dogs. Up here, for the most part, it was mostly a bully crowd. So,
Yeah.
in American Bulldogs, we have both standards. We have what is now referred to as the standard and either the bully or the classic. So you have kind of the sport model and kind of the bodybuilder model, if you will, or a
Right.
little bit more substance. So up here it was all bully crowd, and Ohio's kind of been the epicenter of what I'll call maybe the more extreme American Bulldogs,
Hmm.
where they kind of look more of a supersize old, or maybe even lend towards kind of having a little more mastiffy look. But so that's kind of what I was exposed to, and I was really into it. I love the bully dogs. At one point, I thought maybe I wanted to be this purist and live within the Johnson bloodline confinements, but I after kind of dabbling with that a little bit, I quickly realized that uh, and not taking away from the guys that do the Johnson stuff, because I've seen some nicer dogs, but I was just getting too many weird things. I mean, the front ends were too forward. It was just a cumulative of kind of funkiness that I wasn't into. So,
Right.
yeah. And then through the shows, I was obviously meeting more people. Um, and I met a woman that was out of Montreal, and we had kind of befriended each other and kind of came up with a mutual agreement. Since she was so far north and I was down here and had more access to the shows, that we kind of became kennel partners. And she was like, "Well, here, hey, how about we do this?" And it was kind of the original arrangement was that she would whelp puppies and do the actual breedings, and then I would take the prospects down here, run them through the show paces, get their titles when I got them ready to, when we got them kind of titled and where we wanted health tested, then I would send them back to her to get the breedings done, because I really had no interest in whelping dogs.
Right.
Um, and then of course we kind of got knee deep into that, and she ended up having some medical issues, some health issues, and that kind of took her away from the dog. So then I was like, well, like, okay, I guess this is my gig now. So I went back up, got all the dogs that I wanted. We kind of moved dogs that we thought we wanted to wash out, and
Hmm.
then yeah, then I had a hard lesson on whelping dogs and
Boy.
breeding and all that stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
whelping's not my favorite thing. Like,
No, no, it's not.
N it's
No, it's
very
not.
stressful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
very,
It
and
is.
I have a lot of litters under my belt, so going
Mhm.
from that point to now, yeah, I mean, I've put quite a few dogs on the ground, and I've whelped a lot of litters, and I've had some good luck. I've had a lot of good luck, and, and I've dealt with some trials and tribulations. I haven't dealt with anything too serious. I haven't lost any bitches or anything like that, but the occasional puppy loss here and there, and just dealing with either C-sections or infections, or all the stuff that comes with
Y-
dogs.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, whelping. I look at whelping like, uh, kind of like raising kids. The gratification is when you kind of send them off to college and they find a home. But
yeah,
yeah, whelping ain't no joke. So
no,
it is
no,
stressful, man.
yeah.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people overlook the fact that you and I had talked about this off air a little bit, but how stressful breeding can be on a household in general, a marriage, a
Hmm.
family, kids, especially when you get into these gamier working dogs, and
Hmm.
the fights break out or somebody gets out, something happens, an incident. It could put a lot of stress on a family.
Right.
But the actual just being in the whelping box and trying to get the pups out safely and get mom reassociated, and making sure her levels are good and that she's kind of take care of them. I think that's the first hurdle. And then you spend that, you get a little bit of a lull in that first 4 weeks, but man, and then it's hell on wheels from there on
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
That
for real.
last 4 weeks with a decent sized litter really puts you puts you
Yeah,
to work.
you gotta have some good systems as you
Yes.
go along and to
Yes.
make it however easy you can.
Yeah.
You've been in the breed 30 years. I know a lot of the older breeders like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
The one thing I like about the trajectory that I took, that I was probably in the breed for almost 15 years before I really got serious with doing anything more than just training dogs. In the beginning, it was just getting my dogs really well trained, which laid a great foundation for moving on. And then when I did get kind of more serious about the dogs, it wasn't, oh, I'm going to be a breeder. It was like, oh, I just want to go do stuff with my dogs. I want to get some high quality dogs, and I just want to go do some stuff. And that included going to the shows and trying to be involved with the events, and then just meeting people and learning from other people that were in the breed that had more experience as far as actual breeding. Um, so it's a long run, but it was a nice, slow, solid kind of foundation that kind of set me up to where I am today, which, now it's all second nature. It's kind of just, now I'm more the architect than the builder. You know what I mean?
right.
I'm just putting the plans together. Yeah, there's a lot of work involved into getting to that point, but I know what to expect. I've done it too many times now. So I know the good, bad, and the ugly. And we were at a show, it was probably about a month ago, and we were all standing around, some of us that have been around for a while, and we were talking about it. And we were talking about the act of whelping. And it was funny because one of my friends was like, I feel like the more litters I have, the more comfortable I should be. But it's actually the opposite, because for every next whelp is just introducing me to one more problem that I know exists. So
Right.
now it's like the next one, the 50th litter isn't any easier than the first litter. It's almost arguably harder because what could go wrong.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, you
yeah,
can't predict. You can't predict
no,
what's gonna happen on
no,
this web. Yep,
yeah,
yep. You
yeah.
you talked about where you are now. Where are you now? How many dogs? What your program look like?
Well, the program probably holds a total of 30 dogs, and they're not
Oh,
all here on property.
right.
Um, Typically the way that I do it now, every litter I'll keep a male and a female. Typically when I say keep a male, that means making arrangements in a pet home or a partnering breeder or somebody that wants to be in a co-ownership situation. The females I keep here. Um, my reasoning for that is I want to have the relationship with them. For anybody that has done any kind of guest whelping, whether you've brought somebody else's bitch into your place, bred her,
Mhm.
and then whelp the puppies at that point. If you've done that, you know that it ups the ante again on that same conversation of the trials and tribulations of being in the whelping box. I mean, I've been in full on wars with dogs in the whelping box that weren't mine.
Mhm.
So my reasoning behind keeping the females is just building nice, strong foundation with them. I can really see their true temperament as they develop, and they trust me. They get handled by me daily. I push the limits with them, make sure that they're sound, and then that way, when I do decide, or if I decide to breed that dog, we already have that mutual trust, and I don't have to worry about the dog turning around on me in the box and trying to bite me or anything like that. We can just kind of get through the whelping process, especially if it's a maiden bitch. I like to make sure that I have the relationship with her.
Mhm.
Usually by the second litter with the bitch, I've got her trained. She knows the process, when to push, when not to push, and what we're doing. So I usually like to keep the females because I feel like for me in my program, they are my driving force. I feel like a lot of other programs out there, whether it be American Bulldogs or any other breed, a lot of people lean heavily on the males.
Mhm.
I just see a lot more influence on the females, and especially anytime you have, a litter in utero. We talk about it with horses too, because we're into that as well. But like,
Oh, okay, cool.
in horses, it's not, it's a very common practice just to take a random field horse, go pull an embryo out of a super bitch and put it in this, basically this other mare. And she's just gonna, you're gonna take your golden bitch and whoever stud you're breeding them to, and you're gonna get that egg and the sperm together, and then you're gonna stick it in just a random carrier. And
Mhm.
we talk about it, even though the genetics are built on the two animals that were bred, there's a lot that happens in utero from the animal that's carrying them, the emotions, the anger, and all that stuff. So I just feel like there's just a lot more weight that can be had in a sound bitch as far as carrying the litter, whelping, mothering them, teaching them in that process, as they grow up, keeping the pack kind of organized and putting them in their place. And I think genetically, for me, I see a lot more influence on the female side than I do on the male side. And for me, I have exceptional females. So it's a real win-win for me. I don't, typically if you have a super exceptional female and then you can go out, whether it's your own male or somebody else's, you're already ahead of the curve. You know what I mean? And that's kind of my mentality, where I know a lot of other programs, it's not that their bitches are bad or, subpar, but they're not at the same level as the male. And I try to keep, as best I can, both dogs to be at the same level,
Right.
at
I
least
think that's
physically.
still a big misconception in dogs, is where we put a lot of emphasis on the males.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
and I'm sure you deal with the same thing. When you have a litter, if I had a litter of 7 males, I'm not sweating selling nothing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I know they're sold. They're gone.
Right.
Everybody wants a male. Everybody wants that big, man stopper. He looks super impressive. He's ripped. The females, if I get a whole litter of females, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
At least I feel that way. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right.
I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to have to work,
Right,
regardless of the notoriety of the program or how nice the dogs are. I
right.
still have to work because most people reach out. They want males. You know what I mean? Occasionally, I would say it's probably 3 to 1, 3 males interest to 1 female. So yeah, I
Right.
mean, but yeah, so yeah, I keep a lot of females. That's primarily what I do. And with the males, they want to fight. They piss on everything. I mean, they
Mhm.
literally just mark
Oh God,
everything.
yeah.
I mean, my females are so dominant that they mark as well. But the males, they just drive me crazy. I do have good relationships with my males,
Mhm.
but it's not my preference to keep a yard full of males. There's just really no money to be had there. I mean, if I
Right.
don't have nothing to breed, I may have all the males in the world, but and the unfortunate truth is, and this is getting a little off topic, but what I've seen in the last 15 years in American Bulldogs is less people are working together, and most people will breed. As far as to males, they'll breed what's convenient and local to them, or with a buddy. They won't spend the money to go 10 states over and invest, $3,000-4,000 in a trip to go and breed to a superior male. They'll just pick something around the corner. So for me to have a whole bunch of males sitting around here with the intent of like, I'm going to stud them out and make some money back on the program, it just isn't realistic anymore.
Right, right, right. Um, I got a question about uh whelping. Some people send their dogs off. I've never have. But if you were to do something like that, send your dog to a whelper, how much time do you think the whelper and the dog need to be acclimated to each other?
I don't think there's even a time limit, because I had a female that I brought in from another breeder. I brought her in right as she was in heat. So we had her the entire heat cycle. We obviously bred her on property, kept her all the way up for the 9 weeks to whelp, and then kept her for another. So I had her for what, 2.5 months. And
Mhm.
I had, yeah, it was, we had to correct some things in the whelping box after about puppy 2. I had to
Right,
straighten some shit out. But
right.
yeah, but other than that, she was fine and we got it corrected, but I just don't think that uh, uh, there's a difference between cohabitation with a dog and setting some boundaries and being able to work around each other. And then there's being in a 4x6 whelping box together with my hands all up on you with puppies coming out,
Mhm,
and some of these bitches can get very possessive, and they just don't understand quite the process, maybe, if they're a maiden bitch. So
mhm.
yeah, I don't know that there's an answer that truly gets you into the like happy friend zone. I think
Right.
anybody that's going to get, and I'm not talking about like, little Scotty Terriers and stuff. We're talking about grown man dogs. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Right.
uh,
Dog it up.
there, you get a 70-pound, 80-pound muscled up bitch in a whelping box, and she wants to turn around on you, but it's not going
Yeah.
to be fun. I don't care who you are.
Right. Right.
I'll take a bite with the best of them, but I don't want to. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
If I
Yeah.
have to, I will, but I don't want to.
That's right. Yeah. So you got serious about getting into the lineage of the American Bulldogs. How did you figure out, what did you start doing? Studying pedigrees, talking to people? What?
You know what? Honestly, that might have been one route I should have went, but
Mhm.
honestly, my so I guess to back up a little bit, my heart was always in boxers. When I was a kid, I didn't grow up with any dogs, so I'll start with that. My
Mhm.
parents were avid neat freaks. We traveled quite a bit for different various things. So having a dog in our household was just never going to work. We weren't there enough. And I had a couple predecessors dogs to my first American Bulldog, one of which was a boxer, because I was like, oh, I always wanted a boxer. My girlfriend at the time bought me a boxer. It was a little 60-pound bitch, and she was as fucking mean as the day was long. I mean, she was just angry. She had high dog aggression, super athletic, super nice dog. But I realized in having that dog, I was like, well, man, these dogs are too high strung. They never settled down. She just never really ever settled down. And the American Bulldog, I figured out real quick that like after about a year or 18 months, and they're kind of dialed in. I mean, they're not really a high strung dog to begin with,
Mhm.
um, especially on the bullier side. So, um, when I started getting serious that I want to get into these dogs, and started thinking about like, okay, what do I want to do? And, maybe I want to be a breeder, maybe. Um, I really just went out and started going to those shows and seeing dogs. And then
Oh yeah.
I would always lend myself, my taste would always lend myself to a dog that was athletic like a boxer, but still had those bully features.
Right.
So I was already against the crowd because I already wanted an athletic dog, and nobody gave a shit about having an athletic dog back then. Everybody thought I was crazy. Everybody
Mhm.
wanted these like super bully and real typey kind of dogs. And that just really wasn't where I wanted to be. I wanted to get out and like, cause I at the time, even with my, what I'll call my second generation American Bulldog, I had him paired with that boxer bitch. And I mean, I used to ride my mountain bike on wooded trails for 6 to 10 miles, and these dogs were going with me off leash. They'd run. If I did 6, they did 12, because they'd go
Wow.
up and come back and go up and come back.
Yeah.
So I never understood. I never was even exposed to all this heat stroke and soft palates and shitty breathing. I just never saw that. And I was like, and when I saw that at the show, I was like, well, that doesn't seem right. So I wanted a dog that could get out there and still be active with me, because I was still pretty active.
Right.
And so when I first got into like what I thought, was going to set up my foundation, everything was built around athleticism. So
Right.
that's where I started. So it really wasn't about and I just didn't know. I didn't have a mentor, so I didn't really know to like, oh, okay, well this line has bad hips, or this line's has a predisposition to this or all that. So some of that stuff I had to work out real time and figure out.
Mhm.
But it really just came down to that initial type for me. I did have enough common sense to realize like, oh, if I looked at a pedigree and the dogs were consistent to themselves within the pedigree, I felt like I had a higher level of success of producing that again. If I looked at a pedigree and it had a mishmash of phenotypes in there, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to take a little bit more work. And that's kind of what I probably spent the first 4 or 5 years really trying to figure out, was how these dogs were going to produce, and what the best way to get to the result that I was looking for, how to shortcut myself to where I really wanted to be.
Right. So, in just a historical question, how long has this breed been around?
Realistically, they got kind of started, or the idea got started in the probably the 60s, and
Mhm.
then really it developed kind of with just a bunch of dogs. Really, it's a band dog breed. I mean, really is what
Right.
it is. It's a more refined band dog. So in the beginning, it was like, okay, we need a dog to do this function. These two dogs kind of look similar. We want to put these two porch dogs together. And then it kind of just jumped around like that. And then, there was a mishmash with Johnson putting other breeds in there just to kind of get the mass of the size or the drive or whatever. And then Alan, apologize, Alan Scott, who's still kind of active in the breed, but definitely on the back nine, with putting puppies on the ground. But he kind of went a different direction, really wanted to streamline them and make them more wood friendly, hog friendly, and take them out and hunt them. So they had to be totally built different. They needed more leg. They needed to be more dog social with each other, work in a pack and be able to work in a pack. So there was a lot of culling that happened in those woods. If dog went out, got heightened on that pig and decided to go after another dog instead of the pig, well, typically that dog didn't come back out. But and it did some good for the breed back then. And then, start getting into the 80s, still really nobody knew about these dogs. Even when I had my first, we would take our dogs everywhere. So if I went to the Blues and Jazz Festival downtown Columbus and I had two American Bulldogs on a leash, it was like the parting of the Red Sea. Nobody knew what they were. Everyone wanted to stop and talk to us about, like, what is that, man? They had seen Rots and they had seen Dobermans and the stuff that was popular back then in those early to mid 90s, but American Bulldogs weren't on the radar. And then the real explosion kind of happened when I got involved up to about 2010, I would say. That was really when people were really trying to do something with them. There was a lot of guys doing the Schutzen work and some other PSA stuff. A lot of guys were really, at one point, the ABA, which was an American Bulldog Association registry, they were even kind of tightening their reins on potentially what it was going to be a champion. They wanted health testing. They wanted, the confirmation title. And then they wanted a certain baseline of like a BH or some obedience work or maybe a first step worth of man work. So the standards really started getting higher and people were really striving to meet those standards. There was some underbelly communication, between the breeders about, if this was necessary or not, but people were striving so hard that the quality of the dogs was really high at that point. And then you hit that 2010, 2013, you start to see the decline of the show scene and some of the breeders. And, you see the incline of the internet. And I think those two graphs, if you looked at it, kind of correlate where, the quality of the dogs has fell off the more exposure that there is on the internet, because I think a lot of people just want to live by pictures and maybe videos, but mostly pictures. And they want to sell their dog as being all this or that and athletic and all this stuff. And some of these guys have never been to a dog show. They've never seen 50 American Bulldogs in one place, let alone 120 or 150 like the heyday. And, I've seen guys that will claim that their dogs are athletic. And I'm like, oh, well, if you think that's athletic, let me bring my dog over and show you something. And, their dog's just getting rolled all day. So, I think with the internet, the standards have gone down and people have less exposure to the breed, which has ultimately left a dilution in quality. I mean, that's where we're at now. I mean, it's, there's only really what I'll say, there's probably two handfuls worldwide of breeders that are actually trying to preserve the breed and do something better for it than it was before.
Wow, y'all at that point?
Oh yeah, we're down there. Oh yeah, we're way down there. I mean, it's fell off quite a bit. So I hope that the ones that do stay in it and continue to push on, maybe they get a resurgence in the breed, and then they can use some of this breed stock to try to bring it back up to its full potential. But not to say that there's not some good dogs out there. They're just harder to find. You know what I mean? That's the reality of it.
Well, I'll say this. You don't find too many 30-year vets in dog breeding who have microphones and headphones.
Yeah, that's true. I'm getting up there in age, but I'm still trying to hang on technologically.
Right.
I mean, I have
important though, Justin. That's important.
It is.
You guys come forward and kind of educate the public, because the public get duped as well.
Yeah, I mean, I started a little podcast, which just kind of fell off just based on time, and I think we discussed it when we talked a
Yeah.
little bit. But my biggest hurdle with it, aside from my own personal time, is just trying to get these guys to come forward and talk. Whether it is
Yeah.
the technology that holds them back, or bad business skeletons in their closets, or they're just
Right.
tired of dogs. They just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I still collect a lot of the old literature, so I go back and kind of learn it back from then.
Mhm.
There was an American Bulldog Review magazine that was out there for years. They
Okay.
posted monthly. I think it was I think it was monthly, and I've got most of the set. And it's just very interesting to see how much higher the standards were, and how many more good dogs there were back then versus now, talking from 99 to 2010. Yeah, I mean, it
Right.
was exponentially better.
Wow. Okay.
And that was probably you have the foundation guys, the Johnson guys, and there was Hines, Johnson, Painter, Alan Scott. Those were kind of the originators, the guys that invented the vehicle. And then that second wave, that maybe late 80s, early 90s into the first part of the decade of the 2000s, are really when they turned the automobile into sports cars. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that was kind of the renaissance of the breed, and now it's just kind of stuck in no man's land. I think part of the problem too is just the modern day dog owner. I think that's a big contributing factor to it.
Mhm.
A lot of people get in, how it is. People get into they get an American, they get any breed. Let's just say they get
Mhm.
any breed,
Right.
and they love their dog. And now all of a sudden they think they should have a litter of puppies because they love their dog. Well, they don't realize any of the medical stuff that need to keep track of. They don't understand dog temperaments. They don't understand breeding practices. They don't understand anything that could happen to their dog. They don't understand any of the risk. And those people will come on the scene, or they might even set out to be a breeder, and they'll buy up a couple bunch of dogs and start doing some breedings. And then next thing you know, they're kind of stuck out in no man's land because they've sold a bunch of pups. The people are starting to call with problems. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't
Mhm.
know how to change anything. They basically become a useless reference.
Right.
And with that being said, now you've got a bunch of households with puppies that have no answers to their questions, and it's probably going to be the last American Bulldog they ever own because they don't know how to deal with it. You know what I mean? So that group of people is also contributing to the dilution of the genetics. Not that the puppies that they're selling are going on to be in other breeding programs, but just the fact that they're putting bad experiences out there. And these are a working breed, and most people aren't into most people aren't into their dog going out and just tearing apart a raccoon because it's in the yard. I mean, they're like, oh, the neighbor's dog is yapping, and your American Bulldog wants to get through the fence and just,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
end its life. And a lot of people aren't built for that, and they don't
Mhm.
do the foundation and the legwork to keep those things from happening. And then also you have the contributing that your breeder potentially didn't have the knowledge base and the foundation to help guide you to avoid those things right from the rip. So with all that being said, now you're kind of stuck with either working enthusiasts or people that have had American Bulldogs in the past and hopefully have learned a lesson to make the next one even better. But with all those things combined, the internet, what we'll call backyard breeders or just quick hobby breeders,
Mhm.
all that has led to the dilution of the genetics, and the popularity of the dogs. I mean,
Right.
they're cool dogs. They are literally, this breed is literally the all-American breed. It will do everything you've ever asked it to do, from innately guarding your children to being just the biggest ham entertainment in your household. But the other side of that is the resource guarding is very high. They love their family so much that everybody else can be a problem. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Right.
you got to do your due diligence with, you know, exposure, and just it's not socialization as much as exposure.
Right.
I hate that word socialization, but
Right.
exposure, setting up a good routine, just everything that a working dog truly needs in its life, which is routine, consistency, a pack leader, a definite pack leader, consistency within the household. The humans all treat the dog the same way, so you can get the same result back. And a lot of that stuff gets kind of looked over because just a lot of people just don't have the experience, man. You know what I mean?
A lot of people think that word socialization means like everybody got to meet your dog, everybody got to touch your dog, everybody got to pet your dog. I think a lot of people think that.
Yeah, and I think that they think also it's like, I need my dog to go sit in a dog park and be buddies with all these dogs. And
Right.
the unfortunate truth is, like, I don't know that I want to use this analogy, but I will. But like, if you ever been arrested and go to jail, okay, you put a bunch of grown men in one room, we aren't all just going to get along. You know what
That's
I mean?
right.
And that's
Yeah.
dogs. I mean, if one guy's got a bad attitude and somebody else pops off, it's going to end in a bad way. And that's the same thing with dogs.
Right.
I'm never going to put my dog in a position. I've learned over the years, because I've had some very hot dogs. I mean, very dog aggressive dogs. But I've learned over the years to eliminate those negative experiences and never put my dog in a position that it's around a dog that I can't trust, don't know, a strange dog, somebody else's dog that's off leash that comes up and it's way too forward for an American Bulldogs aren't going to back down. I don't care if another dog, I don't care if it's a Great Dane to a Chihuahua, if it comes up in a bad way and displays terrible, physical visualization to the other dog, they're going to respond, and it's not going to be good. You know what I mean? So they're going to get a hold of that dog, and they're just not going to let go. And their drive is to keep on because they're used to hog hunting. So their whole mentality is get a hold of it, hold it as long as you can. Once it gets tired, shake it to death. I mean, that's their whole game plan. And, there's just a lot of the info. You know how it is. There's just a lot of dog information out there. A lot of it's fluffy bullshit. There are some good trainers that give some good information out there, but when you decide to kind of get a hold of a dog of this caliber, no matter how well bred it is and how good the temperaments are, you still have work to do. It's not a free pass. It's not, these aren't, for me, I've always been a purist and never tried to breed the dog out of the dog. I know you and I have both talked about this off camera, but I've tried to dial it down. But it's not, I think people take that in the wrong way, because it's not me just breeding two dull dogs together.
Right.
It's breeding back in more intelligence into the program and giving those dogs the highest possible best outcome for somebody that wants to put the work in. But it's never going to work if they don't put the work in. It's not a free pass. They might get a great dog in the home that does everything you ask of it, but is an absolute asshole to every other dog on the planet. So that, if you don't put the work in, you're only going to get so much. And it just depends on what your end game is. I mean, if you need to throw your dog in the truck and take it over Track Supply and wash it because that's your lifestyle, well, you better put the work in when it's young to get that accomplished, because you get locked in that little 10 by 10 room with another dog that decides to come in as you're in mid wash and your dog's trying to foam at the mouth to get to it. It's all going to be bad. I mean, it's just it's a bad look on you, and it's a bad situation in general should something happen. So, it's never a free pass when you're, and as much as I do my due diligence with my new owners, not everybody's built or has the time, or, and I try to make sure that I don't walk myself into a bad situation with somebody with just a pocket full of cash. I don't always just sell a dog to somebody if they're, if they've got too many dogs, they don't have enough experience. If they got too many kids, even, I won't sell them a pup. I'm just like, you got 4 kids, I get you on a dog, but
you're too busy.
Not this dog. Yeah. You're too busy. I mean, you got 4 kids. You're busy. I don't care what age they are. You're busy.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I try to weed some of that out just so I don't have to deal with it down in the future. And then I stay in touch, especially that first year of their life. I'm involved. Like, I'm like, hey, how's it going? 2 weeks later, 2 months later, 6 months later. I know when 10, 11, 12 months comes along, these dogs are going to turn into straight asshole teenagers. Let's
Right.
talk about it now. Let's figure out what's going to happen so you can stop the behavior now. And then
Right.
once you get over that crest, the 13 months or so, man, you could have these dogs so dialed in. I mean, I've taken 11, 12-week-old puppies into a show ring, and they will stack, they will run, they'll do everything an adult dog will do. So it's there, the foundation's there, the intelligence is there, but you got to put the training in, to get it to that
Right.
point. Yeah.
Right. So you're speaking on a level that a lot of breeders, I mean, a lot of breeders, I don't know. Well, and it's usually that in between breeder, that medium breeder that says things like the shows are destroying the breed, the AKC and all this stuff is showing the breed. But you show dogs and you got working dogs.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts when you hear things like this?
Both things are true. So
Mm.
the AKC is just on the fledgling part of having American Bulldogs. They're not really fully registerable yet, but I will say that the the dog show community can definitely destroy a breed because the AKC doesn't care about field titles. The AKC, although they have programs for it, the dogs that are winning in the show rings typically are fat, typically clearly aren't worked. They're well groomed, they're well behaved,
Yeah.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that the intention for what the dog was bred for initially is still within that genetic line. And I try to find a balance. I'm a very purist guy. I don't, here's the deal. I'll take a dog that can go and catch a rabbit, kill it, and eat it
Mhm.
over a dog with perfect structure. I don't give a shit
Right.
about that. I watched the dog in the yard or in the field or in the woods do what it's supposed to do. So this whole, function leads a form leads a function, the whole argument that goes back and forth. At the end of the day, if the dog can do what it's supposed to do and it does it at a high level, it's my dog. If it doesn't win in the show ring, I don't give two shits. It's not going to affect my program. I'm going to build the purest American Bulldog I can, that still has the game in it, still has that prey drive in it, and still has a high level of intelligence. If I want to do something different with it, I'll teach it. You know what I mean? If I want to
Yeah.
dock dive with it, people have done almost everything with American Bulldogs. They're doing scent work, they're doing dock diving, they're obviously doing the man work at various levels, from
Mhm.
just a hobbyist all the way up to, PSA or Mondio ring or any of the French ring stuff. I mean, there's some really high level stuff going on. And the dogs, it's not a high percentage of American Bulldogs that can do it at a high level, but there are a good amount of American Bulldogs that can do that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, if you truly wanted a utility dog, which is what they're built for, you can have it. But what I'm totally against is just building a dog that supposedly has perfect structure but has the temperament of a lab when it's an American Bulldog. I'm not going to do that. Like, there's just no way. It's
Right.
just, you know. So
Right.
yeah, so both people technically are correct. But what I will say on the other side of the show environment, and I show NKC primarily, which their shows are breed specific shows. So when I go to the show, it's all American Bulldogs.
Right.
And what that does is when you go there, you get to see your peer group. You get to put your dog. I mean, you go out and you walk your yard every day. You spend your time with your dogs every day. But you don't know how big another person's dogs are. You don't know how game they are. You don't
Yeah.
know how much of a bitch they are, if they're a cur. You don't know any of that stuff until you get out and see those dogs. Because I've
Right.
seen some dogs in pictures and I'm like, oh, that dog's really impressive. And then I go to the show and I either see a shitty ass weak temperament
Right.
or maybe I didn't see this in the picture, just like maybe a little better angle or just
Mhm.
something, but if you don't go, you don't know. And the other thing is there's a lot of guys at the show, women and guys at the show that have more experience than you, have
Mhm.
better dogs than you. Who else better to befriend than people with more experience and better dogs?
Right.
And my current breeding that I have going on right now, is with a partnering breeder. You know, her and her husband, they both have a dog training business. He's a judge for he's a judge for IGP. He trains IGP. She trains. You know, he breeds shepherds. She breeds American Bulldogs. They literally, their whole life is dogs. Their income is dogs. Their life is dogs. There's nobody that can have a better setup than them to evaluate the program, have the gold standard out there, doing all the health testing, all the temperament testing, putting in all the work day in, day out, 12, 13-hour days of just dogs. And when I kind of bred myself into a corner, and it was time to get out and go start hunting for other dogs to use. And why wouldn't I jump the train and just go to the gold standard? Why would I, why am I trying to do something different? She's got the work done. I'm just going to piggyback off of it and get some of that intelligence back in my program. So if I had never gone to the shows, I never get to meet her. You know what I mean? I don't get to find that friendship and that relationship, the mutual respect that we're both in it to do better things. So we can kind of come together and say, hey, are you down for this? Yeah, I'm down for that. So let's get it done. And, I put my work in. This breeding that I did right now, I had to go down to North Carolina for it. I live in Ohio. So, I had, probably 500 in vet bills of progesterone testing. I got the whole travel, a week down there. It just so happened it coincided with a dog show, but it made me leave a little early because of timing and all that stuff. But, you got miles in this stuff, and you got money into it too.
Yeah. And not everybody will allow you to get caught up like that. Everybody won't let you come in and breed to your dogs. Maybe it's a competitive thing. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, here's the deal. I'm in sales. I've been in sales pretty much my whole life. And some people you just don't want to fuck with. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's just be honest with it. It's like
some
people, they could have a really nice bitch, but if I don't like the person, I don't want to have to deal with you. Or some people are super needy. Some people are super fucking needy, man. They just they need you let them use your stud, and now you're their mentor all the way through the whole puppy process. Like, hey, I'm here to help. And I'll say that to everybody that's listening. If anybody ever needs help, I'm the first guy you can call. But I don't want to commit to helping you. I don't want to be on the phone with you every night at 2 a.m. with some, the puppy's pooping purple now. Like, oh, Jesus Christ, man. You know what I mean? It's just one thing after another. So there's a little bit of that out there. And then, if you really want to be honest, in the dog world, very fickle place, very competitive. There's not, just because you're into dogs doesn't mean you're a good person. But, a lot of times too, if you go and use Joe Schmo's dog over there, and Joe Schmo's got baggage out there in the community, you're kind of looked at as on his team now. Just even all you did was breed to his dog, but somehow you accepted all the shit that he did wrong.
Right. You're doing business, but it's so clicky. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. So there's that too. So but to go back to the original thing, it's if someone's trying to get into dogs or see a real improvement in their program, make friends, take that short pass, get to the best program and go use some of their dogs. I always tell people, if you are going to get into breeding, or you've been into breeding and you've got a couple bitches, like, stop buying puppies from people. Fuck that. Stop buying puppies from people. Produce puppies. You get more choices when you produce puppies. So take your bitch, go find the male, pay the money, do the work, get the breeding done, and then spend 8 weeks evaluating what you got. And if you don't know what you got, keep quite a few and then figure it out. You know what I mean? But you're going to get that quick pass to the next level if you just go to the person that's at the next level. It's a pay to play thing, but until you have the respect or the rapport, I could probably do breedings with a handful of people where I don't have to exchange any dollars. You know what I mean? It's on favors and handshakes and just reciprocal business. And, I've pushed many of people to other people for puppies and stuff like that. So you put you fill your favor coffer until you actually need to use it. And but for the average guy, you just got to go out there and find the best and start using it. Stop thinking that you're going to do something that a million of us have tried. I'm going to take these two mediocre dogs and I'm going to make the best program in the world because I've got a different recipe. Well, you don't, dude. You don't.
Yeah.
Genetics are a funny thing, dude. I mean,
Right.
until you've been grinding out with the same blood for so long that you can be 100% about everything that's going to come out, you got a long learning curve. I mean, it's just not easy. You know what I mean? It's just not. Some of the breedings I thought would have produced the best have fell short, and some of the breedings that I kind of was like more of an experimental. You know, when I say experimental, both dogs are health tested, both dogs are sound temperaments, but you know, the pedigrees are loose and there's no common ancestry. I'm like, well, I don't know what we're going to get. We're going to try something. We're all going to learn together. And sometimes those ones bang, you know, like
Yeah, they'll
really,
crop it.
really
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
you know, and I always find, and I know we're bouncing around a lot, but
Yeah, it's all
I
right.
always find that, when you outcross, like this breeding that I have now is almost a true outcross. And I know the puppies will be great. There's going to be a lot of variation, but the quality of all the dogs is going to be very high. It's when you start line breeding that you'll start to see those shortcomings, you know, especially the tighter you get. Um, you could get a consistent litter of 7 because you line bred so tight, but they all might be shitters or just not what you're really looking for. I wouldn't say that I've ever really produced too many quote unquote shitters, but you know, I've had a couple litters that have had issues down the line that, you know, I didn't do anything wrong. It's just the way the genes lined up and things didn't click. But a lot of times when I notice that once I start taking these outcrosses together, I usually get some banger litters. Like that's where it really shows up. Where you're like, oh, okay, we got something here. Let's go. You
Right.
know,
Right.
and that's been more from mixing and matching the blood versus trying to really hone in and get tight.